Victoria, is everything all right? People talk, say things.
Hello?
Why didn't you tell me it was out of order? I suppose you think that's funny.
I'm not allowed out the front door.
Who says you weren't?
Them.
Who?
Them.
It was terrible out there. I could hear breathing.
We told you.
Are you worried about the man?
They hate us. That's the truth. They want to kill and torture every one of us. You can see it in their eyes.
Come now, Frederick. Do you dream about unholy things?
I really don't know what's going on here. There's something wrong, and that's a fact.
Wait. What did you dream last night? This manifestation of evil. You must be delivered from evil.
Kid, mind if I take a swig of milk?
Knock yourself out.
Ulcers. All I do these days is drink fucking milk.
My heart bleeds.
Yeah, well, so do my ulcers, you punk bastard. What the goddamn hell's this about? There's easier ways to commit suicide, you
There's
know.
a dead man downstairs who found a harder way.
Louis? If you killed Louis, so help me.
Campagna's okay. He'll have a headache to make a hangover seem like Christmas, but he's okay. Fatso, too.
Then who?
A blonde guy, I don't know his name, but I've seen him around.
Have you?
Last time was at Bayfront Park when you sent him to help kill Cermak. Time before that, I saw him running down Randolph Street when Capone sent him to kill Jake Lingle. And tonight, you sent him to kill Nate Heller. But he didn't quite get the job done, did he?
You're wrong on that last count, kid. Dead wrong.
Then you sent that son of a bitch to Florida just to catch some sun?
I didn't say I didn't send him to Florida. What I do say is I didn't send him to kill you.
He pushed me off a skyride tower tonight, Frank. And you know I really don't like heights. I should be a twisted sack of bones and meat on a morgue tray about now, but somehow I'm not. I'm here. He's dead, and so are you. So are you, Nitty. I wish to Christ Lang had killed you that afternoon. I wish to Christ I didn't make them call an ambulance for you.
Heller, I didn't send him. I didn't even know the bastard was in town. He doesn't work for me.
He doesn't work for anybody now.
Something you aren't at all aware of. Why am I not already dead?
The silenced automatic in my hand raised to aim itself at his forehead.
You are dead. Fuck you.
Wait, just wait. Lower that goddamn thing, will you? Just hear me out. I didn't say he never done work for me. He's a guy Johnny Torrio recommended to Al back on the Lingle deal. I used him later myself. Used him now and then on ticklish matters.
Oh, is that what I am? A ticklish matter?
Kid, I know how you feel. I know the kind of emotions you got running wild in you. I know all there is to know about revenge. You could ask 10% Tony if he wasn't in hell. But I didn't hire a contract on you. I swear by all that's holy.
And I'm supposed to believe that because of all the Catholic shit on the walls? Who sent him then, Frank?
I don't know the answer to that. Not for sure. But I can figure it out, and so can you, if you try.
I was getting confused, starting to wonder what the hell I was doing.
Although edited for television, tonight's thriller contains scenes of suspense and violence which may be unsuitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
Observations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination and the perhaps never to be defined existential. Mr. Rogers, that's right. Moi, Robert Meyer Burnett. And I'm Rob casting at you imagination connoisseurs, coming to you from the Rob Observatory. That's right, this is Rob Observations episode number 1045. And this is it. This is the last night. We have one more sleep until James Gunn's Superman has been unleashed upon the world. The LA premiere was tonight. The social media embargo has dropped. There are all kinds of comments all over the web. And I'll tell you, from what I've seen, at least what I've been retweeting, the response has been resoundingly positive. Now, here's the thing. You got to take all this with a grain of salt, people. Because, it's the premiere. People have gone to the premiere. They've seen special screenings. But that doesn't mean people are wrong. And I'll tell you, the responses have confirmed, at least for me, that the movie that we have been presented is the movie the way I thought it was going to be. I thought tonally it was going to be a very different thing. It was going to be very much a comic book movie, not a superhero movie trying to change its comic book roots. James Gunn has embraced this. He has said that Guardians of the Galaxy #1, Volume 1, was his ode to cinema, but he has said that his Superman was his ode to comic books. And I suspected as much. I was looking for my favorite review that somebody had put up on X, but I couldn't find it. Let me give it another cursory. I'm sorry, I was trying to get to it before I started the show, but things were going so fast up the old feed. It was very tough to find the actual. Let me just see. Maybe I can find it. I'll give it a few seconds, because I thought this one tweet sort of nailed it and nailed what I thought it was going to be. But a lot of the people that I follow, at least on Twitter, really, really enjoyed the film. Unfortunately, I just can't find it, and I apologize for that. I don't know what to say. Hang on, maybe I can do it this way. Let me just look real quick one more time. I guess I can't find it. I've tried, but they're all over Twitter. You can find all kinds of responses to the film. Roxy Strye and Perry Nemiroff liked it very, very much. I'm giving it one more scintillating YouTube, I know, but German Lucier liked it. Okay, here you go. I found it. I found the tweet that I wanted to read. It comes to us from Griffin Schiller. Griffin Schiller. He writes, "While it took a minute for me to get onto its wavelength, there's no denying that James Gunn's Superman will define the icon for a new generation. A proudly punk rock rebuttal of the cultural shift towards cynicism and dehumanization that's incredibly on the pulse, raging with authenticity and sincerity. It lovingly captures the very soul of Big Blue, filtered through the singular lens of James Gunn. For better or worse, mostly better, this is one of the most handcrafted and authored superhero films I've ever seen. Pulling heavily from All-Star Superman in the animated series, big screen Superman has never felt more vibrant and alive, relatable, and human. I fell head over heels for Corn Sweat and Brosnahan, while Holt's Lex is perfect, deliciously petty, obsessive, vindictive, and Gunn finally gives Superman and Lex Luthor their long overdue Batman and Joker moment. Oh, I can't wait for that. I walked away instantly wanting more of this world, these characters, and the DC universe at large." Again, that comes from Griffin Schiller on X. And to me, that says that to me was what I wanted out of this movie. Now, I haven't seen it yet. I'm seeing it tomorrow. I will be back tomorrow night around this time with a review, my thoughts on the film. Now, look, if nothing else, this is an event. This is a cultural zeitgeist moment. If you're interested in film, you're interested in comic books, you're interested in pop culture, you're interested in culture at all, this is a film that I expect to be very polarizing amongst some people. There's going to be a lot of people that, look, I grew up with comic books. I'm surrounded. I mean, if you look at there's different levels of, there's omnibuses all around here. There's all kinds of Superman comics and paraphernalia all around this place. And I'm just going to say, I've been a fan of Superman my whole life. And I've seen many different incarnations of Superman. I saw Superman the movie in 1978. I was 11 years old the weekend it opened. So Superman has been something that I've been experiencing as a character my entire life. Superman on film goes all the way back to Kirk Allan in the 1940s, along with the Fleischer cartoons. So Superman has been a mainstay of American culture, for the better part of, he's created in 1938. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I think, again, it's going to be a litmus test. There are going to be people in the world that are going to dig this film and people that don't. Maybe like every film. But I don't have any agenda. I mean, as a longtime film fan and a big imagination connoisseur, I think it's really cool we're getting a new Superman movie, the dawn of a whole new shared universe with a different tone and approach than we've ever seen before. That alone, you had my attention. There you go. And it's not going to be for everyone. Just like I say that I think that there's a lot of people that don't have a sense of whimsy, and especially fandom. But that's okay. That's okay. I have an article I want to read, a great interview with James Gunn that came to us from the Times. But before I get into that, I'd like to read a letter I received. And this letter comes from I hope I get his name right, Shoaib Muhammad. And he writes, this is the title of the letter, Heartfelt from an American Muslim Imagination Connoisseur. I doubt you'll even read this, but I wanted to send a personal message as a 24-year-old American-born and raised Muslim. I'm a huge fan of your show. I first discovered you through John Campea, and like many others, I was instantly drawn in by your intelligent insights on film. Since then, I've become a regular viewer of Robservations. I'm a big film fan myself. In fact, I just got out of an IMAX screening of F1 earlier today here in Dallas, Texas. Loved it, by the way. I really wanted to reach out and to let you know that there are Muslims like me, born and raised in the U.S., shaped by American culture and ideals. I grew up watching the same cartoons and movies as every other kid here. I'm not here to push outdated Sharia law. I'm not a jihadist or a terrorist. I don't share the extremist ideals associated with Islam and other parts of the world. I'm simply an American who happens to be Muslim, occasionally visits a mosque for prayers, and most importantly, shares your love of film and television. I was raised in Brooklyn, New York, surrounded by diverse cultures and religions. I value all people, and I stay away from identity politics. I understand your criticisms of Islam, especially the insane and outdated laws that, frankly, I also believe have no place in the modern world, here or anywhere else. I just wanted to make myself visible to you. As someone as well-read and insightful as you, I hope you won't let ignorance or stereotypes generalize people like me. I'm proud to be living in what I believe is the best country in the world. While my parents are immigrants, we've been peacefully and fully acclimated to life in the U.S., and we're now living in Texas. I completed all my education here, and I'm currently on track to earn my master's degree. Well, that's awesome. At the end of the day, I'm just a young film fan who found a home on YouTube to obsess over movies and TV. I hope my religious label isn't what causes me to seem different in your eyes. Much respect to you and everything you bring to the table, RMB, and remember, everyone you meet has a story to tell. You just have to ask the right questions. What are those right questions? Well, first of all, I hope I didn't... Shoaib, it's S-H-O-A-I-B. Shoaib, I hope I got it right. Shoaib Muhammad, first of all, I want to thank you for writing in. What a great letter. I mean, I think, if you really think about it, we wouldn't have landed on the moon without Islam. And I think that there's a lot of countries, for instance, look, every religious group on this planet has a fundamentalist sect of that religion. And religious fundamentalism, I think, is incompatible, even though much of Western civilization has a Judeo-Christian basis for our morality, which I don't deny. And it's the fundamentalist aspect of it when people take a legalistic interpretation of one book, and I think that we get caught up in that. And while I do think that there's a lot... Look, the difference between Islam and, say, other religions is there really was no religious... There was no Reformation, and there was no Age of Enlightenment for Islam. And when you have 2 billion people plus that practice the Islamic faith, and many of those are religious fundamentalists that believe in a legalistic interpretation of the Quran and Sharia law, the Hadiths, it's problematic. And you have Muslim clerics who are in Canada and in the UK and in France and in Germany that are openly saying that we're here to transform these cultures and turn them in to what we want, which is the global caliphate and everybody living under Sharia law. And look, even the UAE says we don't want the Muslim Brotherhood here. That there's a lot of, first of all, there's a lot of great Muslims on the planet. I've met many of them, and they're not fundamentalists. And I think, like you, the great thing about America is I don't necessarily believe that America should be multicultural. I think what America is, the strength of America, is we are the products of all of the cultures that have come to America and taken parts of their culture, and we've added to our culture as a whole. A lot of people tend to believe that, well, America is a Christian nation. I'm like, well, okay. Certainly some of it is. Some of the underlying principles definitely come out of that tradition. But also, there's a lot of people, there's people from around the world. I live in Southern California. There's people from around the world here that make Southern California a vibrant place to be. You can find food from all over the world, for instance. And I think that I believe in taking all of the great things that all the cultures that have ever existed on the planet, pour them into America, take what we love, share what we love, and what comes out of the mixture of all of the different cultures here strengthens us as a people. And there's no better way than, sharing food with one another. But I have no problem with anyone who is a Muslim, just like I have no problem with anyone of any religious faith, as long as they're not trying to impose their religious faith on other people, especially against their will. And all religions have done that over the course of time. However, I do think that there's value in knowing and understanding religion. Religion is the basis of our world, and I think the great religious texts have a lot to say. I mean, I was raised a Jew, but I'm kind of obsessed with making a movie about the story of Job. That's different than what Angel Studios did, but I just want to say I really appreciate you feeling that you could write in. And even though you thought I wouldn't read your letter, which is absurd because it was a great letter and I really appreciate what you have to say. But I understand after reading some of my social media posts when I speak about medieval jihadism, I can understand how somebody would think that. But I want to thank you for writing in. And first of all, congratulations on your master's. And you are welcome here anytime. Write me a letter anytime and I will be happy to read it. And imagination connoisseurs are imagination connoisseurs. We transcend boundaries. We transcend religious beliefs because ultimately, at the end of the day, human imagination is fueled by everything. It's fueled by religion. It's fueled by culture. It's fueled by food. It's fueled by all of human endeavor because that's what fuels our imaginations. And every little scrap of our culture that we have makes us, as long as we understand one another, I think better people. So thank you very much for writing in, and I very much appreciate the time you took to write the letter. You're welcome here anytime, as are all imagination connoisseurs. You can write me at rmburnett1701@gmail.com. Just remember, put Robservations in the title. My only criticism of this letter, Mr. Muhammad, is that you didn't put it. It didn't say Robservations in the subject heading, but it did say heartfelt, so I found it. But if people don't write, you got to write Robservations, and then because when I do searches I get so many ridiculous emails every day, not yours, but other people's. I get spam, I get all kinds of stuff, and searching for Robservations is what helps me find people's letters. Well, the social media embargo has dropped. I really wanted to do one last show, one last Superman show. I'm not going to do anymore after tomorrow night. I think I've milked the subject as much as I can. But I did find an interview with James Gunn that I wanted to read and talk about. And there's been a lot of, people he talked about immigrants, and everyone's going, oh, it's a movie, it's a left-wing MAGA. I don't know what people are saying, but James Gunn really didn't say what a lot of people are saying, he said. But I found this article, and I wanted to share it. It's from The Times, and thetimes.com, and I thought it was a pretty good article. Again, both articles, they're not, the second one's not about Superman, but this article, as always, is in the description below, as is the tip link, as is the link to where you can find True Noir, our audio drama, which I keep playing clips from, but you can get that. It's available now. And of course, White Devils, a film I produced, we are going to have a worldwide online premiere on August 9th in celebration of South Africa National Women's Day, because the movie was based on a play written by South African playwright Reza DeWitt. She passed away sadly in 2012 from leukemia, but she was a very celebrated South African playwright. So here's the article, and this interview was conducted by Jonathan Dean. This is from Friday, July 4th. James Gunn says, "Some people will take offense at my new Superman." The director reveals why his Superman reboot has jokes, politics, and is only 2 hours long. He's the Man of Steel the world needs now. Superman is back, and has this divided, destructive world ever needed him more? The superhero was created by Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, American sons of Jewish immigrants, who first mentioned the character in a 1933 story about a villain who uses a mind-controlling drug to make money and mischief. Fast forward 92 years, and we have social media doing just that for us, and a Superman film has rarely felt more timely. The new movie comes to a planet that feels like it could do with a man who has the ability to turn back time. Superman, directed by James Gunn, is a triumph. After a long wait, this is the film the character deserves. In 1978, Richard Donner made us believe a man could fly when he picked Christopher Reeve as Kal-El, the Kryptonian who falls to Earth to become Clark Kent. And despite a superb sequel, the franchise has since been a reboot slog of diminishing returns. Brandon Routh is forgotten, Henry Cavill is boring, nobody seemed to know what to do with Superman until now. I met Gunn before the gargantuan global push for the film that Warner Brothers needs to make hefty millions, maybe $1 billion. Gunn, who directed Guardians of the Galaxy, is the franchise overlord, charged with creating an elaborate, interconnecting world for DC Comics that will be able to challenge the Marvel Cinematic Universe. DC's kingpins are Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, and Gunn is a director who knows we have superhero fatigue and wants to wake us up again. There are 3 things I don't ever need to see again in a superhero movie, says Gunn, an amicable, booming, bullish 58-year-old who gets to the point. I don't need to see pearls in a back alley when Batman's parents are killed. I don't need to see the radioactive spider biting Spider-Man. And I don't need to see baby Kal coming from Krypton in a little baby rocket. We've watched a million movies with characters who don't have their upbringing explained, like when we see Good Night and Good Luck. We don't need to know the early life of Edward R. Murrow to explain how he became a journalist. Who cares? Bravo, James Gunn. Bravo. Finally, somebody who gets it. Gunn's film has Superman, David Corenswet, as he looks on the posters from off, fully formed and stripped for action. He already works at the Daily Planet and dates Lois Lane. The film starts by flinging a bloodied Superman to the ground after a struggle with minions of Lex Luthor. Luthor wants to corrupt people's minds using the internet and start a war to sell some arms. It's frankly very 2025 and also bang on 2 hours long, which comes as sweet relief when the 3-hour Avengers Endgame exists. My main goal was to make parents spend less on babysitters, Gunn says deadpan, but I'll always try hard to cut away the fat, and I've never worked as hard on a film as I did on Superman. And how can Gunn make sure his Superman does not go the way of recent superhero films that bombed at the box office? Well, it's different to how it used to be, he says. Up until Iron Man, the only superheroes that made money were the big 3, Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man, plus X-Men. But then visual effects improved, so even though people thought Iron Man was a C-tier superhero, the film looked real. It changed everything. And there were a few glory years when Marvel could put out anything it would make $650 million. But those days are gone. Now it has to be something that really grabs an audience. One way to do that is with a 10-minute scene that just features Clark and Lois talking about geopolitics and whether Superman should have stopped a war. It's exactly how to make a superhero movie to engage adults. It's definitely the most unusual thing that we put in the movie, Gunn says. This is a Superman film for the age of endless discourse. with the difference being that the people, Clark and Lois, who disagree with each other here are willing to discuss and even perhaps learn. Yes, it's about politics, Gunn says, but on another level, it's about morality. Do you never kill no matter what, which is what Superman believes, or do you have some balance, as Lois believes? It's really about their relationship and the way different opinions on basic moral beliefs can tear two people apart. But, Gunn says, laughing and keen to remind me that we are all not on Newsnight, there's also a flying dog in the film who wears a cape. He's called Crypto. And come on, Clark has glasses and people don't know who he is. He can hold up a building. He's wearing a costume. If I flew around saving people, I wouldn't make myself a costume I had to change into every time. There's something peculiar about a person who makes a costume, and Clark is a peculiar guy. So yes, some fans will simply like the film for the huge fights, the sidekicks, and the superdog, plus the humor, so often missing from Superman films. This Superman is playful. He enjoys his job. Yet the film is coming out during a summer of protests in the U.S. about President Trump's plans for and rhetoric about immigrants, which is jolting given that Superman makes clear that he is a refugee from another place who came to the U.S. And before you say, oh, Superman has gone woke, this is all in Superman's lengthy history. Superman was written by men from immigrant families, and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees once released a book in Italy titled, Superman Was a Refugee Too. I didn't know that. Less than 10 years ago, DC Comics backed World Refugee Day. The Man of Steel's story is the ultimate example of a refugee who makes his new home better. In the edition of Action Comics number 987, Superman saves a group of undocumented workers from a violent racist. I mean, Superman is the story of America, Gunn says, an immigrant that came from another place and populated the country. But for me, it's mostly a story that says basic human kindness is a value and it's something we've lost. I ask if he's considered how differently the film might play in, say, Blue State, New York, a.k.a. Metropolis, and Kansas, where Kent grew up. Yes, it plays differently, Gunn admits, but it's about human kindness, and obviously there will be jerks out there who are just not kind, and will take it as offensive just because it's about kindness. But screw them. Before we go on, it should be said that Gunn has a history with Trump. In 2018, after Gunn's public criticisms of the president, which included a sexually vulgar joke and comparisons with Hitler and Putin, the right-wing commentator Mike Cernovich pulled up social media jokes by Gunn about pedophilia and the Holocaust, which led to a social media campaign against him. Gunn apologized, but under pressure, Disney, his employer at the time, fired him. Before further pressure led it to reinstate him, but then he went off to join DC. There is a scene in the new Superman with Luthor's monkeys trolling away at screens. Was that, I asked Gunn, alluding to what happened to him? I don't think so, he says, grinning. It's not really about me, but people in general driven by rage or the bots governments pay for that create all sorts of nonsense. This Superman does seem to come at a particular time when people are feeling a loss of hope in other people's goodness, Gunn adds. I'm telling a story about a guy who is uniquely good, and that feels needed now because there is a meanness that has emerged due to cultural figures being mean online. He laughs, and I include myself in this. It is ad infinitum, millions of people having tantrums online. How are we supposed to get anywhere as a culture? We don't know what's real, and that's a really difficult place for the human brain to be. If I could press a button to make the internet disappear, I'd consider it. And no, I don't make films to change the world, but if a few people could be just a bit nicer after this, well, it would make me happy. I say, how in our divided world, if Superman did actually turn up, we would argue against him, shun him, call him a fraud, and kick him out. Well, it's happening with the movie, Gunn says. We posted footage of David with a bunch of kids who were extras on set. Kids love Superman. It's like when they see Santa, and David is high-fiving them. It was so beautiful, such a cute video. And then I saw people saying, oh, great, we've got a Superman who's a pussy. Are you kidding me? That's something you're going to attack, that little kids like this guy and he's kind? He is incredulous about this, almost delirious, which feels like a decent time to raise a topic he might want to skirt away from. The fictional countries of Barovia and Jarampora in the film, Barovia, armed to the absolute teeth, plows into a rather unfortified Jarampora, which appears to be a Middle Eastern state. The Barovians seem to want to kill everyone in sight. Which countries, I ask Gunn, does he think viewers will believe are being alluded to here? "Oh, I don't really know," he says quickly. "But when I wrote this, the Middle East conflict wasn't happening. So I tried to do little things to move it away from that, but it doesn't have anything to do with the Middle East. It's an invasion by a much more powerful country run by a despot into a country that's problematic in terms of its political history, but has no defense against the other country." It really is fictional. As a kid in Jarampora calls out Superman, he knows that help is not coming from other countries on Earth. He needs something divine, something super to save him. When I was growing up, I thought of the big three. Superman was the archetypical American superhero, but Gunn disagrees. His market research showed that people around the globe think of him as far more international. Yes, he has the homespun Americanisms from his boyhood in Kansas, but he remains an alien just like his creators felt they were almost a century ago. He is a hero for the world, Gunn sums up. The question is, how will the world take him? Good questions. You know, I found the discourse around this movie, and look, it's not discourse that is unexpected. You know, I've had people say, well, if he doesn't say truth, justice, and the American way, I'm not going to watch this movie. I've never really understood that, because obviously we are a global, when our economies affect the world, when stock prices go up and down, and one economic decision can affect the entire world economy, a character as powerful as Superman, especially in the world where we've had metahumans, I guess there's 300, I don't know yet, it says at the beginning of the movie, however many metahumans are on Earth, we already know that we're part of, I mean, what's going to happen when our economy can affect something that happens on a different world? Not that we're ever going to get there, but what if we did get there? And I think holding on, clinging to those legalistic beliefs in Superman is a little strange. And I like what James Gunn had to say about all this. I mean, look, he's not making a cinematic universe for America. He's making a cinematic universe for the world. American entertainments are global enterprises. And this idea that somebody should stand on ceremony, and people say that, well, I'm not going to see this movie if he says truth, justice, and the human way. It has to be America. And I find that sort of reductive and sort of silly. But then again, what do I know? I mean, I'm a globalist. I'm a civilizationist. I'm not a globalist like people say. I would like to see the human life brought up around the globe. Because, you know, I love to travel and I love to meet people. And, you know, you can only travel if the world is stable. And I would like to see civilizations around the world, well, I'd like to see them preserved. I'd like to see them being functional. I don't think that one civilization should have to endure threats by another civilization saying, we're going to turn you into us, when that civilization is full of, as I said earlier, medieval jihadism. What's the point of that? I've never understood this idea that why would anybody want to die sooner than later? We're going to get there. You know, it's like Clint Eastwood said in Unforgiven. Everyone, what did he say? Actually, I was going to say, hell of a thing killing a man. You take everything he has and everything he's going to have. I'm in no hurry. I'm in no hurry to shuffle off this mortal coil. And anybody who tells you you should be doing something for the greater good by sacrificing your own life is an asshole. So I'd like to see the whole world brought up, mostly because I want to travel and meet people from all over the world, because it's been such a gratifying way to go. Look, I'm sure that the discourse around this movie, because it is Superman, everybody has their own idea of what Superman's supposed to be. And in my mind, this is going to be a different Superman than we've seen. This is going to be a much more a Superman that is inspired and derived from comic books, not one particular comic book storyline, the way Zack Snyder leaned into The Dark Knight and leaned into the death of Superman. This is going to be coming from a wide pantheon of different Superman stories throughout the years. And yes, leaning into All-Star Superman, a Superman for all seasons, and all of that. I'm really looking forward to that. And James Gunn has given us a universe where metahumans have been normalized on Earth, which that alone is really, really interesting. Because remember, even in the MCU, when we saw Iron Man, he was really the first publicly operating superhero. And then metahumans started coming out of the woodwork. I'm really curious to see how sorry about that, everybody. I have no idea why I get cut off. I don't know how much of that you missed. So hopefully you didn't miss it all. But we'll see. I mean, everybody again has their own vision of what Superman is supposed to be. I have found though that there are people that only know Superman from TV shows and movies. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of fans out there that have not read comic books. And I understand that. But, consider comic books literary. And there has been a lot of, as James Gunn pointed out in an interview, one of the interviews, I don't know who it was with, but he was talking about how a lot of the miniseries that have come out since the 80s, Superman miniseries, like the Man of Steel John Byrne miniseries that followed the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths, or the Red Sun miniseries. There's lots of, or a Superman for All Seasons, that graphic novel was beautiful, or All-Star Superman. There's been these runs that a lot of people are unaware of, and I feel that even amongst fan circles, there's a very limited vision of what people think Superman is. And a lot of people, what's really interesting to me in a lot of these early social media reactions to Superman is a lot of people are mentioning the Superman animated series and Justice League International, which excites me. And, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are, again, I talk about a sense of whimsy and everything, that I think you're going to need to bring that with you. If you don't have a sense of whimsy and, you're not down with Krypto the Superdog, I think that there's a lot in this movie that's going to bother you. You're not going to buy it. You're going to think it's silly and frivolous and ridiculous. It's not as hard-hitting. It's not as metal as anybody might want. And I understand that. I completely get that. But I really think that this is a film, and James Gunn has said it, this is a 4-quadrant movie. It's a movie, look, the Zack Snyder universe was not for kids. I would say the kids under 10 years of age, some could handle it. But Batman v Superman is not a movie for kids. And I don't even know. I might have liked it when I was 8 years old. Although I don't know. I think it might have been off-putting. This, I was talking about this movie to me, Superman, reminds me of how excited I was for Pacific Rim. As a fan of Japanese science fiction, I could not wait to see Guillermo del Toro, who I knew got it. He understood the appeal of giant 300-foot-tall Jaegers fighting kaiju. I totally got it. And he gave us a world where the creatures, they were coming, the monsters in Pacific Rim were coming from another planet through a dimensional gateway at the bottom of the ocean. And they would show up and fight 300-foot-tall kaiju robots. The robots would fight the kaiju. The Jaegers would fight the kaiju. And in that movie, when I lost my fucking shit, it was the greatest thing I've ever seen. But when Gypsy Danger picked up an oil tanker and used it as a bat after dragging it down the streets of Hong Kong, it takes a certain kind of person to buy into that, first of all. There's a lot of people that I know they just didn't buy into it all. And I get it. I'm not one of those people. That to me was one of the greatest cinematic achievements of all time. The color of the effects, and then Gypsy Danger gets taken up into the sky by a giant winged kaiju and dropped, dragon monster Rodan. I can't tell you how much seeing that movie, how much I loved Pacific Rim. I loved everything about, and it's not even perfect. You don't get to see the 3 Chinese triplets. They go down too hard and too fast. You don't see them. They needed a battle. But this movie, to me, if you're a Pacific Rim person, I think this Superman, having not seen it yet, I think this Superman is where things are going to kind of go. And I'm so there for it. I can't wait for it. And we'll see, because I think a lot of people, it's not for them. And it'll be really interesting to watch fandom respond to this. But I would say to everybody, really think about it. I've already had people say, it's mid. I hate when people say things are mid. First of all, what does that mean? It means it's not a 10 out of 10? What makes it mid? that like a guy kisses a girl in it and you're like, ew, cooties. I mean, what does that mean? I don't mean to be so reductive, but I don't know what mid means. Mid is in terms, like, to me, the fact that Lois Lane and Clark Kent or Kal-El have a 10-minute discussion about morality and ethics in a superhero movie, I'm in. That's what I want as a moviegoer. I want something I haven't seen before. And if you look at it, if you think about it, I love the scene, and this always is interesting, because I once posted recently in the last 6 months the scene from Superman the movie where Lois Lane interrogates or has an interview with Superman on the roof of her apartment. I think that's one of the great scenes in any superhero movie. There's a lot of people that don't. They think, oh, it's creepy. Superman's using his X-ray vision to look at her underwear. No, she's asked him to do that. And the way the scene is played out, it's playful. It's make no mistake, it's a seduction scene. There's a lot of people, I think there's a certain maturity level that comes along with finding value in that. And there's a lot of people that aren't going to be down to seeing those kinds of things. And I get it. That doesn't mean you're wrong or right. But I'm going to be very curious to see how all aspects of this movie are going to be received. If nothing else, we're getting, if you're a fantasy film fan, if you're an imagination connoisseur, whether you love it or not, we're getting a cultural zeitgeist moment brought to us by a well-established filmmaker of fantasy films, from writing Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead to making low-budget indie movies like Slither and Super, and having come off of 3 Guardians movies, the Peacemaker TV series, and the Suicide Squad. We're getting his vision of Superman. I think that's worthy of celebration. Now, James Gunn might not be your jam. He might not be your jar of jam. But I'm telling you, it's interesting. And the fact that we get to have these conversations at all, maybe it spawns or spurs conversations about larger issues. I'm excited. I think, hey, it's exciting to be here to get this kind of a movie and have it followed up in 2 weeks with Fantastic Four. I don't know what you guys think. Jump down to the comments and tell me what you think about all of this. And I would be very curious to see what you have to say. Now, I've got a few more letters. First of all, let me check in on this and see if there's any super chats or anybody is talking about things I don't know. Darth Plato says, Darth Plato has multiple tips here. I want to get to them and let me see them all. Actually, let me pull this down a little bit more and get it all so I don't understand why this always, it always looks strange to me. Okay, here we go. I don't want to miss anything. Wow, there's a lot of people that have Brujo says, I tried to nail R&B with an obscure TNG trivia question on X. The man responds with the exact episode title in less than 2 minutes. Bravo and joy. Well, Brujo, if memory serves, you did ask me, you did give me hints. You said the word oceanographer, the character oceanographer, and then you talked about a wooden dolphin carving. And I had to think about it, the word oceanographer, carving of I had to rifle through, and I had to think about it. When the Bow Breaks, season 1. I didn't realize, I thought that you were looking for that episode. I didn't realize you just, I don't know if I didn't get the idea that you just watched it. So, yeah. But yeah, season 1, I just appreciate somebody's going back and watching TNG season 1. Darth Plato says, modern Islamic extremism has ties to Fenian tactics and the anarchism. And the anarchism, hang on, I just lost this. It just disappeared. And the anarchism of the 19th century. That's interesting. True for some instances. Wow, there's a lot of people coming in, so it moves down. I apologize for that. True for some instances of Jewish extremism. The bombing of the King David, for instance. Yes, I mean, that's true, but I would say that, Judaism, being that there's a whole lot less of us in the world, is usually defensive, for the most part. Darth Plato goes on to say, James Gunn and others invoking kindness in defense of their immigration position is sort of Wow, this is frustrating to try and read your tips because they keep getting pushed down because people want to talk. Gunn and others invoking kindness in defense of their immigration position is sort of an inoculation against criticism on the one hand and a pre-made straw man on the other. It's a tactic common among radicals to cloak oneself in righteousness. Yeah, but in this case, I don't think that's the case. I think the fact is that Superman has always been kind of an immigrant. The people that created Superman were Jewish immigrants, and they had to deal with how Jews were thought of when Siegel and Schuster did immigrate. There was certainly it was problematic to be an immigrant at the time. So I don't necessarily think that sometimes a kiss is just a kiss, a cigar is just a cigar. And I think that people are trying to weave in all of this. Everyone wants to make, it's all about our political time. Somebody said that Lex Luthor is supposed to be Trump. I mean, Lex Luthor became president of the DC universe at one point. So to make comparisons of Lex Luthor to the president of the United States is something that actually happened in the comics. A lot of people don't know that, but he did. Darth Plato says, while the opponent is the unfeeling bad guy, Gunn's thinking bubbles up from a mindset that caters to the premise that opponents of illegal immigration just want to keep America as white as possible. Well, I don't know. I don't know if anything he said alludes to that. I know there's a lot of people that do. I mean, it's sort of an interesting position to take, considering that there weren't even when Europeans came to the Americas, the people here weren't white, so we had to replace them before we got here. So, I think that the immigrant experience, by the way, it's an experience that people have around the world, not just in America. Immigrants are not, just Americans. So, and then Darth Plato goes on to say, wow, this is really difficult. I don't know why this is such a problem here. It's not about race. It's about naturalization, which is spelled out in the Constitution. This all illustrates the depth of the groupthink that marinates the thinking in Hollywood. Well, I don't think it's just Hollywood. I don't think James Gunn was thinking about these things. I think people are trying to impose that on him. I think really he was making a movie about truth, justice, and the American way. The question is, what is the American way now? I think we've become, as James Gunn pointed out, very mean. It's really terrifying that AI has come along at this time in human history, because generative AI is training on everything that's on the internet, and the internet is a very mean place. What are we teaching AI how to be? 1001 Johnny. Oh, by the way, number 4, Darth Plato goes on to say, the American way refers to the great experiment, that is the actualization of classical liberalism, at its core, the notion of the individual as sovereign and inherently valuable. By the way, that's exactly what I believe. I believe in the notion of the individual as sovereign and inherently valuable. As Kirk would say, or Spock would say, each according to their gifts. 1001 Johnny celebrates 25 months of membership on the channel. And says, isn't the whole Superman discourse tiring? Superman is Superman. Reeve, Cavill, and now Corn Sweat. If there ever was a name so deserving of a Kansan. Corn Sweet. Yes, you're not wrong there. That's very interesting. But yeah, there you go. Let's see. Let me get back up here. Mario Lopez, all the way from Portugal, has been a member for 51 months. Matt Tuween has been a member for 32 months and says, I hope the Superman soundtrack is good. Gunn always nails the music for his movies. It sounds good. I listened to a few tracks. They were on X. Sparky says, word on Twitter is there is a Netanyahu in the film, and the film is anti-Israel. A main plot about Palestine and Israel. First of all, I don't necessarily think that's true. James Gunn, like everyone's trying to tell me that the Bajorans are a direct analog of the Palestinians. No, I don't think that's true. Hey, it could have been about Iraq going into Kuwait. Or it could have been about, no one talks about Kuwait expelled 400,000 Palestinians in 1990? I think that there's been a lot of strife. What about the balkanization of What about the Balkan conflict? Is it about that? I think it's about any one country doesn't have any defense against a larger country that does. If you want to draw parallels there, you can. I think that the idea, first of all, there were fictitious countries in the DC universe. Was Karak one of them or something? You could be saying that. I don't think there's a direct parallel. And as James Gunn pointed out, he wrote this movie before October 7th, 2023. So the idea of a Middle Eastern conflict is not something that's new. Syria, Yemen, Libya, Iraq, the Iraq-Iran war. I mean, take your pick. So we'll see. Cup a Joe Media says the Superman immigrant criticism stinks of national isolationist fear-mongering led by Russian FSB bot farms. Love it. You're probably right. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. John from New York says, hi, Rob, I'm super excited for Superman, seeing as how it's my favorite superhero, though all the positive reviews have me so high on expectation that I hope I don't end up disappointed. Well, first of all, it is just a movie. Like, you know, the angels are not going to sing when it's over. You're not going to be necessarily transformed from within and be a different person. It's a 2-hour entertainment. You know, hopefully it'll be a lot of entertainment. But I think the immigrant talk about Superman coming to Earth, and people are like, well, he's not an immigrant. He's a refugee. Well, a refugee can also be an immigrant. So a refugee is a status. And I wouldn't necessarily say that Superman is a refugee, because he never got to be a part of Krypton in the first place. He was sent away from Krypton before any strife. And remember, in certain iterations, I mean, we saw that there was societal discord on Krypton between the various houses in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. But the Kryptonians were just idiots in Richard Donner's version. No one listened to Jor-El, so I don't think you have to worry about that. Paul Allen Bernardo says, what do you think of Superman being an immigrant, as Gunn says that the movie is political? I just want grand entertainment with no Trump agenda. I don't think there is a Trump agenda. I don't think that there is any kind of agenda at all. Trump wasn't even president when James Gunn was writing this movie. And I just think that, look, movies are inherently about the world we live in. And if you want to draw analogies to certain things that are going on, you can always do that. But I don't think James Gunn was actually thinking about anybody in particular. I mean, Lex Luthor could be a Bond villain. I mean, if you went back now and you're like, well, you know, Carl Stromberg was just in Spy Who Loved Me was Elon Musk. Well, was he? Was Elon Musk even born when Spy Who Loved Me came out? I don't know. But you could say that. Norwegian Kryptonian, who's been a member for 50 months, says, thank you for that, by the way, is Superman really an immigrant, though, or is he adopted? It feels like a gray area to me. Yeah, I mean, the fact is, Superman is more an orphan than he is an immigrant. You know, and he was adoptive, and he was adopted into a world he's not a part of. The Greyest Star says, I finally watched Rings of Power Season 2 after a terrible Season 1, and I dare say it was actually good. It was better than House of the Dragon Season 2. Well, I don't know about that. But hey, if you liked it, House of the Dragon Season 2 to me is an unfinished season of TV. But, you know, good questions. It's all going to be very interesting to see where this is at. Look, if nothing else, I think the upcoming... It could be weeks, it could be months, it could be years, because we're still talking about Zack Snyder's Superman. The discourse. I'm really excited to see the discourse around this movie. Where is it going to take us? What is it all going to mean? You know, I don't know. You know, other than the fact that I'm going to be very curious to see where it all goes. What do people want out of this movie? What do they think about this movie? There's going to be a lot of people that don't like it simply because they don't like this flavor of Superman. They want a different flavor. They want that serious Zack Snyder metal version of the character, which, look, I totally understand that. I really do. I completely understand where people are coming from. And it's going to be interesting to see where they wind up. I got a few letters I want to read. This one comes from Jem Pashov. Jem Pashov says, "Hi, Rob. I've been watching your YouTube channel for a while now, especially Robservations when it pops up in my recommended feed. I just wanted to send a quick message to say thanks for recommending A Superman for All Seasons. You kept bringing it up on the John Campea show, and I finally decided to read it. Now it's my favorite Superman comic of all time. My second favorite comic overall, right behind Superman Blue, by the way, that is also great, which is also amazing. And if you haven't read it, you definitely should. Oh, I own that. Anyway, I wanted to ask you, do you feel any sort of disappointment that the new Superman movie doesn't seem to be drawing on as much for all seasons as it could have? Of course, we haven't seen the full movie yet, so nothing's certain. But based on the trailers and clips released on YouTube and TV, it feels like it's leaning more toward all-star Superman in tones, themes, and style. It is. Not that that's a bad thing. It's a great story, too, but I was really hoping a film would capture more of the warm, timeless, almost filmy feeling that For All Seasons has. So far, it looks a bit more digital and colder with that bluish tint that gives off a more modern, distant vibe. Just something that's been on my mind. Thanks again for the recommendation. All the best, Jem." I'll tell you, obviously, James Gunn himself has said, too, that a lot of this is heavily based on a Superman, All-Star Superman, which is fine by me. I think the difference between a Superman for All Seasons is a Superman for All Seasons works best if you have a working knowledge of the Superman mythology, because it leans heavily like the giant key, for instance, that you need to get into the Fortress of Solitude, and things like that. It requires an all-encompassing knowledge. I mean, I shouldn't say you can still read it if you don't know anything about the past, but it plays into these Superman tropes that have been with Superman for a long period of time. And again, it's very mythical, it's very whimsical, and I understand where you're coming from, but a Superman for All Seasons has a Sandman quality to it, which, by the way, season 2 I'm enjoying, but it seems a little cheap if you ask me. But I'm still enjoying it. But yeah, so I don't think you have to worry about that. I mean, a Superman for All Seasons is what it is, and it's a different flavor. I don't know if it would have necessarily made as good of a movie, although you could do the vignettes, you could do the different seasons in a Superman movie from that if you wanted to. That would be kind of interesting. Let's see, Andrew Gent writes in and says, "Sir Rob, I didn't know that I was a sir. Sir Rob, I just wanted to say thanks for the Robservation live streams. I've been a fan of yours now for several years. I think I first came across your content back when you did some reviews for Skyfall, and then I recognized you on the John Campea show. I'm a film school grad who studied writing for film and television and briefly worked as a reader in Los Angeles in all what seems like a lifetime ago. Now I'm working as a teacher and occasionally write from time to time, but not nearly as much as I'd like to. Auteur theory is what I gravitate toward the most when it comes to cinema and rewatching films. I'm a huge fan of Christopher Nolan, and I believe Oppenheimer to be his crowning achievement. Of course, The Dark Knight and Inception are pinnacles to not just his career, but to the medium itself, yet I can't help but get a sense that when I'm watching Oppenheimer, I'm able to watch all of his movies at once. Additionally, I really appreciate how Chris Nolan films are marketed. Cinema history is often interwoven into his interviews, as the director occasionally provides a list of films he's referencing or was influenced by in some way, shape, or form. I'm not the biggest fan of fantasy, but due to Nolan's next picture being The Odyssey, I've been reading the book and watching various movies tied to the historical epic. Would you be able to provide a list of books and or films one could dive into before the film releases next summer? All the best, and thank you for the content, Drew. Well, I guess the only thing that I could suggest reading before The Odyssey comes out is the Iliad and the Odyssey, Homer's epic poems. And, you know, in terms of movies, I made a joke that Sean Bean is coming back to play Odysseus in Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. It turns out that it's going to be Matt Damon who plays Odysseus. But a lot of people don't know that the movie Troy, about the Trojan War, is from the same source material. So if you want, you could go back and you could watch Troy and you could look at it as a prequel to Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, even though it was directed by Wolfgang Peterson and it's got a different cast, obviously. A lot of people don't know that, which I find kind of shocking. But, that's our education system for you. But Andrew, good to hear from you. And, I'd have to come up. I'd have to do more. Preparation to find more books for you to read about that, and more films, to be honest. Kevin Seeley writes to me. This is kind of a long one. Feel free to read this letter. This is my response to your request asking us to submit a source of wonder in our lives. I had asked people, I think when I was doing the show on the life of Chuck, I was asking people, like, I love films that inspire a sense of awe and wonder in us. What are those movies that provide you with a sense of wonder, or are there moments in your life that you've had that have given you a sense of wonder? And here's Kevin's letter. I don't have as inspiring a source of wonder as the viewer who relayed his battle with Crohn's disease. As a born-again Christian, I could speak about the moment my salvation or the daily blessings I experienced because of my faith. Instead, I want to speak about a more simple source of wonder that still moves me. My parents. My parents were both born in the middle of the Great Depression, and to say they were dirt poor is an understatement. My mother grew up in a tiny town, a hamlet really, in south-central Pennsylvania between State College and Altoona. Her father was often out of work throughout her life. When he did work, he was as a railroad engineer on a small freight line or as a coal miner. Neither job brought in very little money. Many times, the only food on the family table was either fish he caught in a local reservoir or wild game he hunted, especially deer. To this day, my mother will not fish seafood or venison. At an early age, both she and her siblings started to work to help support the family. And when she was 12 years old, she was a summertime nanny to 3 small children. Each day, she walked over a mile to their home, fed and cared for them during the day, and then walked back home in the late afternoon or evening. My father was only a little better off. He grew up in a small town in the southern tier of New York State. While it was a fair-sized town, it was a struggle for his family. His father was a minister of a small church with very minimal income. Dinner leftovers were a staple of his diet. His mother was always coming up with creative ways to make leftovers not only palatable and nutritious, but also delicious. Some small financial prosperity came to his life following the death of his grandmother's second husband. He was a self-taught lawyer who never attended law school. His practice was somewhat successful and brought in enough to support his wife and children into adulthood. When he passed, my father's grandmother moved in with her daughter and son-in-law, my dad's parents. She brought with her an inheritance, which was not a great sum, but it was enough to help out the family. From then on, 3 generations of my father's family lived in one old frame house on a little dead-end street. Despite their childhood poverty, they both managed to put themselves through college. They worked their way through college and paid off all their tuition without taking on any loans. They also managed to rent an apartment to provide all they needed. My father became a teacher. He took a number of different teaching positions early in their marriage, and they moved 5 times in 2 years. Amazingly, during my early childhood, they bought their first home, and they managed to pay off the mortgage by the time I was 10. This was quite an accomplishment on a teacher's salary, especially in the 60s and 70s. Since my father was a grade school teacher, there was often no income during the summer months. He sometimes managed to get work teaching summer school for a few years, yet once school was over, there was no income until school started up again in the fall. In the years he didn't have summer school, he took on temporary jobs at a local lumber yard or home improvement store, which was nothing more than larger hardware stores. When my brother, sister, and I were old enough to be in school, my mother became a preschool teacher and later both the teacher and administrator. It was a cooperative school funded mostly through child tuition, and her salary wasn't very high. She only taught 2 days a week, yet the job didn't end when school was out, and neither did it for my father. Growing up, we weren't what they would have known as dirt poor. We were fairly average and middle class, yet I often lived with hand-me-downs from my brother, including clothing, toys, and other necessities, and despite this, my parents found ways to provide for us beyond expectation. We often traveled during the summer and the month of August, having a small camper behind that most quintessential family vehicle of the 70s, a station wagon. I got to see a great deal of America and learned a great deal of history and culture on these trips, and it was wonderful. When we were grown, my parents managed to pay all When we were grown, my parents managed to pay all of our ways through college and even provided additional support during our early post-college years. We always knew how little they had and how difficult their childhoods were. We also knew how much they worked to provide for us. Through their hard work, practical wisdom, support, compassion, and love, they achieved one aspect of the American dream, a better life for their children than what they had growing up. That was one of the great and ever-present sources of wonder in my life. I hope you and all of Robservation's viewers can look back on their parents in wonder, as I have been able to. Kevin Seeley. I want to read that again because Clark had parents like that, and that's pretty cool. I really like that. Let's see. Let's see. You know what? I think I'm going to stop there in terms of letters. Those are some good letters I wanted to read. Now, I've got another article I want to read that was in The Guardian, and it was just from the other day, and it talked about reboots and sequels. I mean, Superman, again, it's not like we're getting superhero stories that we haven't seen before. We're getting another iteration of Superman in a different form. So I figured I'd dip into this article. First of all, let me just go back and check and see what's coming here from my friend Alvaro. Zinos Amaro says, Jerry Siegel self-published a magazine called Science Fiction, The Advance Guard of Future Civilizations in 1932 and 33. Great subtitle for the show, The Advance Guard of Future Civilization. I like that. Well, Alvaro and I watched all 9 episodes. Well, we didn't get the 10th one of the Foundation series, season 3, which we both enjoyed. So that's good. Jordan, and by the way, Alvaro wrote a book called Ecumedian, and if you haven't, you should go get it. It's beautifully written, not your everyday bill of fare, but it's a wonderful science fiction novel that will. It's definitely thought-provoking. Ecumedian. Check it out. Go get it. Jordan Saylor says, if Guy Gardner doesn't use his run to finger the public, I'll be slightly disappointed. Well, we'll see. We'll see tomorrow. John from New York says, your point in regards to tone and people's polarization in regards to there's nothing to say that can't be both light in tone while also tackling serious subject matter. One tone does not preclude the other. Hey, listen, John, I agree with you. Look, it all comes down, I think, to, look, I've often said, watching something, people can know how to read, but that doesn't mean you're literate. You can read words on a page, you know what they say, but do you understand the meaning behind them? And look, a lot of people are going to be like, huh, what, when I say this? Watching movies is a learned skill. You need to learn how to accept information the way it's presented in movies. It is a learned skill. Now, anybody can sit down and watch them, but do you understand what you're seeing? Do you understand what the filmmaker is trying to convey through the language of cinema, not having dialogue? You know, Denis Villeneuve talks about the fact that he wished he could make movies with no dialogue at all, which would be an exercise of pure cinema. And I do think that a lot of people are not as cinema literate as they might think. And one of the things I think is a problem with the modern age is if you've only been watching mainstream studio movies for the last 30 years, you've only been consuming one kind of cinema. Now, when you broaden your cinema palette, again, if you're going to sit down, I always talk about the Antonioni Ennui trilogy, but if you've only been watching studio movies of the last 30 years, you'd be very hard-pressed to sit down and watch, say, Truffaut's The 400 Blows. You'd be hard-pressed to watch an Antonioni movie, specifically the Ennui trilogy, La Notte, La Ventura, and The Eclipse. You'd be like, what the hell is this? Even Alfred Hitchcock movies, the tone, the pace, things are different now than they were then. The language of cinema has increased. In the early 80s, with the advent of music videos and MTV, it was made very aware that, especially to filmmakers, that audiences could take in visual information much faster than previously thought. So you started to see movies coming out in ways that they weren't made. For instance, a couple of early MTV movies. One of my favorite early MTV films is Tony Scott's debut movie, The Hunger. The Hunger, of course, people watch it, and when it first came out, it was very puzzling to a lot of reviewers. Like, for instance, Marion Blaylock's backstory in ancient Egypt when she was starting taking lives and became a vampire. People didn't get that. They didn't understand that because a lot of movie reviewers that were not savvy video watchers didn't understand how quickly that information, when it was being conveyed so quickly, what it meant. Now, young people did. So young people were being trained, people that embraced, not just young people, but, kids or young adults, college students, the people that were watching MTV, we were all fascinated by it. We were watching music videos tell us stories. Sure, we had the song to go with them, but the speed at which the images started to change or moved, you could watch a story-based music video and glean a lot out of it. It changed the way movies were made. And a lot of the people like David Fincher, like Michael Bay, like Dominic Sena, like all these guys and women to a certain extent that went into filmmaking came out of commercials and music videos. So they were able to use different ways of using the language of cinema. They were literally changing the language of cinema. And in a way, they were adding what didn't exist before, which was slang. The same way that we have slang, you want to use the word skibbity, no cap, Riz. They were creating slang language in cinema, which didn't exist before. I mean, I call it that, but I'm sure other people have opined in film journals and called it something else. But in my mind, they were taking the visual medium of cinema and putting a spin on it, changing it around, realizing that you could convey. And of course, then you saw really great examples of this by the time you saw Oliver Stone's Natural Born Killers. I mean, he was taking that video language and the way things were going on. And that's not to say that there weren't always filmmakers that were subverting. Nicholas Roeg, for instance, the way he used time. If you guys haven't seen Bad Timing, A Sensual Obsession, check that out and see how he fractures time. Christopher Nolan developed that style, brought that into things like Oppenheimer. You saw it in Memento, where the past and the present intertwined. And there were filmmakers that were really, really good at that. So, yeah. I mean, again, watching movies is a skill. And the more you watch, the smarter you become. The more, and a lot of people don't care. I'm not saying that you don't need to become a college PhD in order to watch movies. That's ridiculous. But if you expand the kinds of films that you're watching, you'll find out that your visual sense will expand. You will become, it's like if you read Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash. I remember when I was reading Snow Crash for the first time, there's kind of a virus, a language virus, and it was sort of reprogramming your brain. I actually had that experience in real life when I started to use the Avid. Now we have editing software, digital, everyone's using, whether you use Adobe Premiere or Final Cut X or Avid or DaVinci. When I started editing non-linearly, this is a total aside that has nothing to do with tonight's topics, but when I started to edit, I mean, I was even in film school when I was at USC and I was taking an editing class. Editorial was a very linear activity because you literally, it was a physical activity. You're cutting scenes as you go. Well, when you had non-linear editing, you could have an entire movie laid out in the computer, and at a keystroke, you could jump from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. And when I started learning the Avid in the mid-'90s and I became a freelance film editor, it put the zap on my brain because I had to learn how to think non-linearly when I was editing. Because, the first feature film I ever worked on was a recut of this movie that Full Moon put out. Peter Billingsley, don't shoot your eye out, kid. Peter Billingsley and I did a page 1 recut of Albert Pune's movie Arcade. And we were cutting it on tape, 3/4-inch tape. So we had to go linearly. And if we wanted to make one change in an edit that was 20 edits before where we were working, we had to go back And we had to do it on tape and then start and drop it in, then rebuild it. It was just a nightmare. But that was in 1993. Then 2 years later, I got onto Avid, and my entire thought process of how movies were made changed. And the language in my brain, I had to stop and go, I don't have to think linearly anymore. I can work on the end of the movie and the beginning of the movie at the same time. So that was huge for me. It totally, and the language that my brain had been working on since I was a little kid, cutting my 8mm films, literally cutting, and changed. Anyway, if you read Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash, you should. It's good. It's one of the most entertaining books I've ever read. Believe me, you'll never forget Uncle Enzo's pizza delivery service, nor will you forget the name Hero Protagonist. Hero is his first name, Hiro, last name Protagonist. It's really one of the more entertaining books you'll ever read, I'm telling you. Well, let's jump into this article. First of all, let me just catch up on these super chats. Cyanagiri has been a member for 32 months. The Dead Man says, are you going to review Strange New Worlds? I will, but I'm not excited for it. You know what? I have no interest. I honestly have no interest. They've killed my interest in Star Trek. I know it's you know why? Because I'll tell you. From what I've seen from the trailers and what I've read from people that have at least watched the first 5 episodes, there's nothing in Star Trek anymore that's thought-provoking. If that makes any sense. Here's the thing. I do believe that modern Star Trek, especially Strange New Worlds, is the Vegas show version of Star Trek. We're getting the dinner theater version of Star Trek. They think they know what Star Trek is. They think they know what science fiction is, but they don't know what either one are. They're basically making a pop culture sense memory version of what people think Star Trek is without actually watching it. It's a show that's entirely based on tropes. And people even speak the way people think characters from Star Trek speak, as opposed to actually going back and watching a Star Trek episode and saying like, oh, yeah, I have no interest unless somebody tells me it looks like, and everything's a gimmick episode. There's no sincerity. That's why when you go back and watch something like Foundation Season 3, you know what's really interesting? Roxanne Dawson, B'Elanna Torres from Voyager, directed, I think, 4 episodes, either 3 or 4 episodes from the 3rd season of Foundation. Her direction is way smarter than the first 2 seasons of Strange New Worlds combined. I think she might have even directed an episode. But it's too bad, because when you have her working with well-written material, she can certainly shine, and she can make your sci-fi TV series better. But when they're dealing with the writing of Strange New Worlds, yeesh, not good. So I don't know, man. The Dead Man, it better be good. Karsig sends in a $5 super sticker. This is his 5th that he sent in. And the Dead Man has been a member for 26 months. Let's jump into this article. This article was in The Guardian. It's by Catherine Shord. Reboots and remakes. Why is Hollywood stuck on repeat? I don't know. Let's see. As Jurassic World Rebirth and 28 Years Later become the latest franchise titles to hit the big screen, movie fans are realizing a depressing truth. This was written on July 6th. It came out Sunday, July 6th, so yesterday. On Monday, the director of the new Jurassic Park movie explained his aim for the 7th film in the series. An innovation? It was not. Rather, said Gareth Edwards, it was karaoke. To prepare, he binged Steven Spielberg clips on repeat, hoping to accomplish genre cloning. I was trying, he told BBC's Front Row, to make it feel nostalgic. The goal was that it should feel like Universal Studios went into their vaults and found a reel of film, brushed the dust off it, and it said Jurassic World Rebirth. And they're like, what's this? We don't remember doing this. I wanted it to feel like a film they discovered from the early 90s. That's kind of weird. Time travelers from that period to the present day would be forgiven for wondering whether their DeLorean was on the blink. Not only are Oasis and Pulp soundtracking the summer with hits from Britpop's golden years, but filmmakers too are. To paraphrase another mid-90s cultural touchstone, the Ferrero Rocher adds, that's a British thing, really spoiling us. In a fortnight, we return to the scene of the crime of 1997's ripe slasher sensation I Know What You Did Last Summer for a new movie boasting exactly the same title as well as the key cast, Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr., whose very names act as a smash hit's Madeline. The 2025 film continues the events of 1998's I Know What You Did Last Summer, but purists take note. Ignores 2006's now non-canonical I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. Mind your adverbs. Kind of the same way that Blumhouse's Halloween jumped over all the Halloween sequels. August brings The Naked Gun, with Liam Neeson slipping into the Swiss Army shoes vacated by Leslie Nielsen's bumbling police lieutenant in 1994, as well as a remake of 1989's The War of the Roses, this time called The Roses, with Olivia Colman locked in a marital battle with Benedict Cumberbatch. Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan return for a very belated sequel to their 2003 body swap comedy Freakier Friday, while currently marauding through cinemas as 28 years later, Danny Boyle's reanimation of the zombie horror series he started in 2002. Still hanging on strong across multiplexes, meanwhile, is Final Destination Bloodlines, the first new installment for 14 years of the franchise that's been confirming people's worst fears about tanning beds, logging trucks, and acupuncture since the turn of the century. Also on offer during the holidays are a rebooted Superman, a new Fantastic Four movie, and assorted anniversary reissues including The Goonies, which turns 40, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, which turns 20, Human Traffic, which turns 26, Sense and Sensibility, which turns 30, and Spinal Tap, which was in theaters this past weekend, at 41. Hollywood, it appears, is stuck on repeat, sucked with an ever more deafening gurgle into a death cycle of creative bankruptcy desperately presented as comfort food. That this packaging strategy works is thanks in part to the dire state of the world beyond the cinema. Audiences are really eager for escape. It makes me think of that Gil Scott-Heron quote, says the veteran film journalist Stephen Gaidos. Americans want to go back as far as they can, even if it turns out to only be last week. Not to face now or the future, but to face backwards. That they seem to be spending a lot of time in 1994 is because those people making decisions in Hollywood and commissioning others to execute them came of age around this time. Edwards turns 50 next weekend. They are therefore particularly keen to relive a more innocent pre-smartphone era, as well as introduce it to their offspring. Cinemas actively encouraging this sort of indulgence is not new. George Lucas's breakthrough American Graffiti from 1973 harked fruitfully back to his own youth, just as Back to the Future in 1985, which Spielberg executive produced, lucratively transported parents to their mid-50s heyday. The difference is that those movies were developed in an entertainment ecosystem with sufficient ambition and capacity to support them. Both films advanced cinema accordingly. There is no way Back to the Future would be made today, said its writer Bob Gale on Thursday, not just because of the colossal cost and reams of theoretical physics. We'd go into the studio and they'd say, "What's the deal with this relationship between Marty and Doc?" They'd start interpreting pedophilia or something. There would be a lot of things they have problems with. Small wonder studios today are so risk-averse. This is an industry in freefall, clutching at the surest things in sight as it scrabbles to regain footing after COVID, which closed about 8,000 screens worldwide, and half of them in the U.S., and the nearly 6-month strikes of 2023 and subsequent dearth of content. Both these moments proved huge opportunities for streamers to stake yet a greater claim on the marketplace. Says Robert Mitchell, Director of Theatrical Insights at Gower Street Analytics, playing safe is simply good business sense. Look at this year's biggest hits to date. The Chinese animation Niza 2, which, by the way, is one of the biggest movies ever made, coming out of China. Lilo and Stitch, a Minecraft movie, all are either sequels or based on massive IP. As Andrew Cripps, head of theatrical distribution at Disney, acknowledged at the Cine Europe convention last month, the top 15 U.S. releases of last year, including Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, Moana 2, and Despicable Me 4, clearly indicated the market reality of what consumers are looking for. On the other hand, you can't generate new franchises without launching original content. And here comes the looming problem, as easy to spot and hard to dispatch as a hillside of zombies. Barrels can only be scraped so far, and many feel they long ago spotted the bottom. Original concepts strong enough to spawn spin-offs are not only costly, they're as rare as hen's teeth. In the 15 top-grossing films of all time, only 2 non-sequels make the list: Titanic and Avatar, both by James Cameron, and both today unthinkable to finance. Everybody knows the ship sinks. A paraplegic marine mind controls a CGI blue alien. Studios are in a bind, says Charles Gant of Screen International. They need fresh stories and characters to launch franchises and create new sequel opportunities, but landing the plane can be hard. It doesn't look like Elio is going to be creating much financial value for Disney or yielding any sequels. The long-awaited new Pixar innovation Elio defied friendly reviews last month to be a hideous commercial bust. So far recouping just half of its conservatively estimated $150 million production budget. Other high-end attempts to break new ground have suffered similar fates. Black Bag, Steven Soderbergh's glossy spy thriller with Cate Blanchett and Michael Fassbender, made back just 2/3 of its cost. Can I speak to that, though? I don't know where it is. That movie is great. I just watched it. I bought the Blu-ray. I 4K. I was guilty of not seeing it in the theater. It's great. Check it out. Mickey 17, Bong Joon-ho's sci-fi cloning thriller with Robert Pattinson, has done slightly better, but given its production budget was $120 million, there's little chance it will end up in the black. These original disappointments from big-name directors, says Mitchell, meant the mood music was, it's going to be even harder to tell original stories on a big or even medium budget. The past tense is important. Since that pair of flops, new hopes has glimmered. Brad Pitt's motor racing drama F1 the movie finished last weekend's box office race in the top position, earning back $167 million of its $300 million budget. And don't forget that in April, Sinners, a supernatural horror film directed by Ryan Coogler and starring Michael B. Jordan, took $365 million from a $90 million budget. These numbers, says Mitchell, demonstrate a clear desire among audiences for an original story. Others are less upbeat. Describing either of those films as original is a red herring, says Gatos. Sinners was marketed as the latest reunion of the team behind Black Panther and the Rocky spin-offs Creed. It was also, thinks Gatos, highly derivative of From Dusk Till Dawn and of Crossroads, the 1986 Robert Johnson drama, not from the 80s soap opera set outside Birmingham. F1 was bankrolled in part by a big pre-existing brand, F1, while its fittings stick rigidly to the template of a 90s action film, just as new release Heads of State is an unapologetic throwback to the White House thrillers of the same period, which generally starred Michael Douglas and a half ton of shoulder pads. Both F1 and Sinners, says Gatos, have more in common with the latest Mission Impossible and Avengers movies than they have differences. All are huge big-budget diversions, amusement park procedurals, gigantic and colorful and built like video games. Whether the IP is fresh, reworked, or recycled, they all conform to the same formula. The big change is the indie and mid-market sector. Truly original, provocative mainstream dramas which deal in recognizable human dilemmas no longer have a place in cinema. Instead, it shifted to TV, where the success of Adolescence and Baby Reindeer, as well as boundary-pushing series such as The White Lotus, Severance, and Black Mirror, seemed to tell a more edifying story to that being offered on the big screen. At home, at least, dramatic engagement with the real world happens to be exactly what people want. Once upon a time, says Gatos, Adolescence would have been a hit movie. But imagine pitching it today. It's about the penal system and the desensitization of kids. The sound of crickets would be deafening. Insulated from the brutality of weekly box office returns, their business model propped up by subscriptions rather than ticket stubs, streamers have the scope to stretch the remit. Jesse Armstrong's urgent tech bro satire Mountainhead was, to all intents and purposes, a film, but it was never in cinemas. Backed and distributed by HBO and Sky and out just in time for contention at the Emmys, not the Oscars. Hoping there's a lesson for Hollywood in such success is academic, says Gatos. No notes will be taken because there's nothing called film culture left in Hollywood. This may be over-egging the wake. They might not be mega budget, but there's still a handful of genuinely original movies in cinema this summer to divert those wary of spandex and explosions. Celine Song's Materialists, a rom-com starring Dakota Johnson, Pedro Pascal, and Chris Evans, leads the UK counter-programming push, as does Bring Her Back, a horror film starring Sally Hawkins that has early audiences alternately in raptures and retching. Eddington, Ari Aster's COVID Western, also stars Pedro Pascal alongside Joaquin Phoenix and Emma Stone and tackles social media misinformation in the age of self-appointed messiahs. Some critics at Cannes were unconvinced, but Studio A24 is nonetheless proceeding with a costly campaign, and no one could accuse the film of failing to offer audiences something chewier than the usual slop. Plus, sequels do not always result in inferior films. Just ask The Godfather Part 2 director Francis Ford Coppola. I don't think it's fair to call all franchise films creatively bankrupt, says Gant. 28 years later did feel something different from the two previous films, and I was ready to re-enter that world. I had a good time watching it. I did too. A better time than watching Black Bag or Mickey 17. Ooh. There may even be some fun to be found in the tumbleweed. The title of the forthcoming Spinal Tap sequel is Spinal Tap 2, The End Continues. Can you believe we're getting a Spinal Tap sequel? 20 years ago, Gatos said he believed the new economics of the blockbuster meant Hollywood was as close as it's ever had to come to being in the packaged goods industry. Nothing, he says, has happened since to reverse that assessment, leading to a strange validity to Donald Trump's perception of the industry as outlined in his tariffs plan. By the end of the weekend, Jurassic World Rebirth will have been exported to 82 territories and taken in about $260 million, actually a lot more. At the cinema anyway. Once you add the Nintendo games and Lego kits, official Power Devour T-Rex toys, and a dad-targeted skin survival kits, special edition Big Gulp Slurpee cups, and limited release peanut butter M&Ms, the numbers start to really snowball. The future of cinema isn't just the sequels. It's the Slurpees, stupid. So this article was amended on the 6th of July. It's Dakota Johnson and not Dakota Fanning, who stars in The Materialists. You know, I thought that was... We talk about this so much. But again, the language of cinema has changed. And cinema itself as an art form has kind of gone the way of the dodo. And will it ever come back? I don't know. The economics of how much movies cost, they're way more expensive than they used to be. I mean, you know, I think back to... Let me take you back to 1981. And at the time, one of my favorite directors was John Carpenter. And he had released theatrically Dark Star, it was an expanded student film that was released theatrically. Then he made Assault on Precinct 13. Then he made, of course, Halloween. Then he made The Fog. And his fifth theatrical released feature was Escape from New York. Now, I'm a big fan of what I would call the B-movie. But in the 80s, the B-movie... which ironically has become the A movies of today, a B movie like Escape from New York could be made for $4 or $5 million. And what made Escape from New York, for those of, I'm sure anybody watching this has probably already seen Escape from New York, but the premise of Escape from New York was that New York is a walled maximum security prison. All of New York Island, all of Manhattan Island was walled off, and the United States police force, like an army, encircle the wall, and all of the criminals in the United States are just dumped into Manhattan, and they're roaming free, and the worlds they make. And of course, the president's plane, Air Force One, goes down and crashes on the island of Manhattan, and they have to send in an anti-hero, one Snake Plissken, played by Kurt Russell, to go in and find the president, and they've got 24 hours to get him. Now, one of the things that was great about that movie, about Escape from New York, is that its premise was a B-movie premise. Like, they weren't really concerned, like, come on, the reality of making Manhattan a walled maximum security prison, would that ever happen in the real world? I don't know. But in the case of us, we imagination connoisseurs, that was the ask. I've talked on this show that movies, especially genre cinema, science fiction, fantasy, and horror, you get one big ask in the premise of your movie. And in Escape from New York, the big ask, the premise was that New York was a walled maximum security prison. And if you buy into the bit, then you can start thinking about, okay, well, what would that mean? And then a smart filmmaker or a smart storyteller would go, okay, what would happen inside New York with all the criminals that are there? Would there be feudal societies? Of course, gangs would be there. Would somebody drive a cab? Ernest Borgnine does, spoiler alert. But you extrapolate that, and that the joy of exploring that premise, and then you have the trope, which could be a Western trope. You have the gunfighter with the heart of gold, the grizzled soldier turned bad guy, who's now outside the law. Call it what you want, and your anti-hero character has to become a hero and go solve the problem. These were the B movies. These were the $4 million movies that were then theatrically released because the people that were making them, John Carpenter, didn't go, well, I'm just making a B movie. Well, nowadays, what would have been, if they made Escape from New York now, and they might remake it. They've been trying to remake it for years. It would be a $100 million movie, and somebody like Denis Villeneuve would direct it, and it would be an expensive A-list entertainment that would come out theatrically. But that would be silly. However, after the Terminator was then turned into Terminator, went from being a $6.5 million movie, a B movie, in 1984, 3 years after Escape from New York came out, to then in 1991, the first $100 million movie. So that's a perfect example of what's happened to Hollywood. But now there's no $6 million movie that we start with. Now, the nearest thing that I could give you that's analogous to that is John Wick. The first John Wick was not Hollywood movies are big action extravaganzas. Hollywood movies are big action extravaganzas. Are B movies turned into A movies. But what we're missing is the original B movies that were made for $6 million, were made for $8 million. They can't make a movie for that anymore. Certainly Hollywood can't. And a movie like Escape from New York was independently financed. It was picked up by a mini major that doesn't exist anymore called Avco Embassy. But nowadays, all movies are basically A-list movies with A-list budgets, even the B movies. And that's one of the big problems with Hollywood is they don't know how to make low-budget movies anymore. They don't know how to make really interesting films that didn't cost a lot, that are also theatrically released, because the biggest problem is the marketing. You can make the greatest B movie in the world, but if nobody knows it's out in theaters, no one's going to go see it and it won't make any money. The problem is the money you need to market a low-budget B movie far exceeds the budget of those movies. So no one will ever spend that kind of money. So they wind up on cable. But then again, those great B movies, they don't wind up on cable because nobody takes a chance on making them in the first place. And what you get is the genre cinema that's on streaming, science fiction, fantasy, and horror, is all derivative of stuff that's already come out before. It's already movies that are all strangely familiar because those are the only things that people know how to make. And that's the only things that people really understand. Let me tell you. Thanks to Quinn's Ideas. Quinn's Ideas, it's a YouTube channel. I enjoy it. I find out he covers a lot of books that I've read, but some I haven't. Here's a challenge. There's seldom times I was reading this book at a restaurant. I started reading this book at a restaurant. I was actually sitting at the bar at the restaurant close to my house. I went afternoon, have lunch, and I'm reading this book, The Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect. And the only reason that I read this book is because Quinn's Ideas covered it. And all I can say is I would kill to either make or to watch a movie that was made out of this book. The first 20 pages, they used to talk about things like J.G. Ballard's Crash or Naked Lunch, Burroughs' Naked Lunch. These were unfilmable books. But David Cronenberg did it. I challenge anyone to make this book as written into a movie. This is actually a very fascinating look at, and by the way, you don't even have to buy this book. You can get the, it's a novella. You can get it online for free. Just read the first 20 pages. The Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect. I would love to make this movie, and I would love to make it as written. It's actually a fascinating look into AI and what could possibly happen, but boy, I mean, if you're a fan of transgressive material, horror, sci-fi, it is as extreme as it gets. And it's a hoot. So, and it's very compelling, so check it out. But I would love to see somebody take a crack at that. You know, nobody would. You'd never get it financed, but it would be cool if they did. Say, man, you have... It'd be like Matthew McConaughey in Dazed and Confused. Say, man, you think you can give me a budget from Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect? No. It'd be a lot cooler if you did. But we don't live in that world anymore, so what are you going to do? What can you do? Let's see what we've got, what people are saying. The Grey Star says doubling down on the Mandoverse will kill Star Wars. You know, I think it's an odd thing. You take 3 seasons of a TV show and it becomes your prestige film release for your prestige. I think that's really a strange thing to do. Why should people go and pay for something they've been watching on TV? Now, it's not unprecedented. The X-Files, the first X-Files movie, which, to be honest, it was beautifully made. I wasn't a fan of it. I thought that it kind of ruined the X-Files mythology, and it was kind of dunderheaded, but that's just me. But they did it. You know, it did all right. And there has been TV shows turned into movies, but the Star Wars franchise began as a theatrical experience, a grand theatrical experience, and now we're just watching a TV show turned into a movie. I mean, I liked it when we went the other way. I liked it when Rogue One became Andor. That's the way to do it. Nobody wants to watch The Mandalorian and Grogu as a big screen movie. I mean, they might, but that's what we're getting now. It's just odd to me. So I think you certainly might be right about that, which is kind of a bummer. I mean, what can you do if that's what we're going to get? Colt sends in a tip and says, Rob, the initial Superman screening reports are saying that Superman spends much of the movie beating up immigrants and beating up U.S. citizens. Do you think that is a correct direction for Gunn to take Superman in? The 2006 Superman didn't punch anyone. Well, Colt, I think we're all going to have a fun time watching James Gunn's Superman. I hope we do. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be curious to hear what all of you think. I will be back here tomorrow night. You will have my thoughts. I will be doing my exclusive review. I guess anything I do is exclusive because nobody else can be me. So I guess I'll just give you my review and tell you what I think of Super Duper Man. Hopefully it's great. I think I'm going to love it. As a longtime comic book fan, I probably will. But I don't know. I might not like it. It might give me everything I like, but it might do it in kind of a weird, convoluted way. So I'm not going to love it, which I hope is not the case because look, I'm going into this movie wanting to love it. I go into most movies wanting to love it, wanting to love them. This is a movie I really would like to love. I really would. I hope I love it. I really do. But if I don't, you can bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow there won't just be sun, but you'll get my honest review of James Gunn's Superman tomorrow night. So there you go. And on that note, everyone, I'm gonna end this stream. I want to thank everybody for generously supporting this channel via super chats and tips. If you want to write me, right down there, just put Robservations in the subject headline. Please, if you want to support my own creative efforts, go to truenoir.co and you can download. I saw Michael Rosenbaum tonight on the red carpet at the premiere of Superman in Hollywood. Obviously, he's a great Lex Luthor. He's also the great star of my audio drama. He plays Detective Nathan Heller. Go check it out. We need your support. We are getting it on a much bigger platform. It's just right now we're selling it only through our website, which you can go and get. Support me and look for August 9th, the world internet premiere. I'm just going to do it internet premiere at first of our movie White Devils, which was written by South African playwright. She passed away in 2012, named Reza DeWitt, who's one of South Africa's most celebrated playwrights. And we're going to release the film right to the internet for the people that we're going to sell tickets. And it'll be a special internet worldwide screening to celebrate National Women's Day, which happens in South Africa on the 9th of August. So come support independent cinema. Come support the work that we do, trying to make movies that we could never get made in the studio system, I guarantee you nobody would have made White Devils based on a play called Deep Grond. I can't say that in Afrikaans, but hey, we've got it coming out. And already people are calling it controversial, and I was told today that somebody told me they hope the movie fails because of what's happening in South Africa and what our Foucault, the philosopher, and how it's all about we're supporting the end of Western civilization. No, to a certain extent. But anyway, I know, right? But on that note, again, thank you for all of your support. I want to thank my moderating staff. Thanks, Darth Plato. Thanks, Tom Jr. Jackson. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. Or go download this. Go download the Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect. Roger Williams, you cheeky bastard. Wow. I mean, I can't even say it. I'd get canceled. I'd get demonetized. But there's a love scene in the first 20 pages of this book I guarantee you you've never read before. And I've read a lot. And I've read all kinds of things. But this was something even I had never encountered before. And I actually stopped. And I had to like look around. And I'm like, should I be ashamed of reading this? I had to look up into the sky. But at the end of the day, no. And I respect what Raj did. Mr. Williams, you did us proud. And I know this is like 30 years old, but it is actually a compelling science fiction story. But if you don't have a strong stomach, plus it is also so weird that what you're reading is so strange that I won't even get into it, but it's really interesting. Check it out. It's a quick read. All right, I'll see you guys later in the next video, as Justin would say. Superman, it's here. Oh, 1001 Johnny says, one more tip, Rob. Sorry. 1001 Johnny says, Rob, I want to run something by you. Is Jurassic Park a monster movie? Hang on. See, now I can't go. I have to come back. Hold on. I'm coming back. Since 1001. Everybody, you fire these tips in at the last minute, and I miss them. I want to run something by you. Is Jurassic Park a monster movie? I would say Jurassic Park has as much in common with King Kong as any other creature feature. I also posit that these are also not kaiju films. Yes, even Kong. Oh, I would agree. I don't think that Jurassic Park are kaiju movies, nor do I think they're like King Kong either. I mean, you know, they are nature run amok movies. They are like Jaws. They are like Grizzly. They are like William Girdler's Day of the Animals. In the 50s we got giant ant movies, which are they were actual. I mean, they're just dinosaurs brought back to life. And I think if anything, it's speculative fiction, but they are not. They're more like, you know, if in a way it's like the Ghost in the Darkness. You know, if you were on the African veldt and you were a hunter and you were being hunted by really intelligent lions, that would be like being hunted by raptors. I mean, the raptors theoretically used to exist, and so I would say that they're creature features in the sense that they're nature's monsters. But Jurassic Park is Jaws on land. You know, I mean, Jaws isn't a kaiju. Bruce the shark is just a big shark, and I think it doesn't. People are mistaken if they think they're kaiju movies. They're not that. And I know they play fast and loose when you get a mutant dinosaur or something, but still, dinosaurs are just, dinosaurs just are dinosauring. You know, they're not. Alvaro said something really interesting, and I agreed with him. We were talking about the Jurassic Park movies, and I think one of the things about the Jurassic World movies is that they have no world building in them. And I was talking on the John Campea show today, and I was talking to Alvaro about this too. Like, you know, what if by bringing dinosaurs back, the very idea of having dinosaurs would trigger something in the sense memory of our own ecology, that suddenly the world was being terraformed to bring back the world of 65 million years ago, which was a byproduct they didn't anticipate. You know, that maybe there's something in dinosaur dung that creates a biological reaction because they haven't been around, that they're purifying that. We didn't even know that there was still remnants of our ecology from 65 million years ago that suddenly sprang to life, and it was, say, incompatible with our atmosphere now or something. So, or why not use dinosaurs in industry and turn them into beasts of burden? How big of a could you? How much of a field could you till if a brontosaurus was pulling, something in front of it? I mean, I don't know. But the idea of the Jurassic World, we never got that. By the time you get to Jurassic World Rebirth, well, everyone's bored of dinosaurs and they're relegated to the equatorial sections of our planet, which is lame. I mean, what the Jurassic World promised was just that, Jurassic World. Let's fight wars with T-Rexes and pterodactyls and whatever. Why not do that? You could, if you had dinosaurs, it would probably cost you far less than building planes and tanks. It'd be a lot more fun to watch on the battlefield. Why weren't people riding T-Rexes? Why haven't we figured out how to domesticate them? So anyway, that's just, I mean, I would like to see people battling. Wouldn't you watch a dinosaur battle thing? If people were, instead of American dinosaur battles or something, where people were riding dinosaurs, we figured out how to domesticate them in a certain way. We were watching them fight in an arena. They didn't do much with the Jurassic World franchise. They didn't really take it anywhere. We all want to see dinosaurs munching people in cities. We got a little bit of it, but not enough. Anyway. Well, thanks, 1001 Johnny. I appreciate that last-minute tip. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you. Can't wait to hear what you think of Superman.